Welcome back to Propology 101, and today we're going to be talking about this, the DL-18. This is also known as the Skiff Guard Blaster, and if you look in certain places, it's also known as the Mos Eisley Special. This blaster is first seen in Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi. Now, the main body of this blaster is built on a pellet gun, a target pistol. It's an R07 bullseye target pellet pistol. They're made in Italy, and there's a few things done to it. Nothing super major altering the pellet gun itself. The first thing they did is they removed the rear sight that would have been right in this area. The next thing they did is they loosened the screw and spun the front sight under the barrel. And then they added this thing. Now, this is an unknown part. We don't really know what this piece is. This really would fall into Greeblies, but since we're talking about the body, this is one of the most characteristic things about this blaster is this piece right here. It's been referred to as the wire nut. It's been referred to as a marker cap, like an old permanent marker style cap. Really, we don't know what this piece is. We do know it passes all the way through, meaning it has a hole all the way through, and the back end is tapered smoothly in, but it's an unknown part. Now, this one has, well, it has a scope. It's called the scope. It sits on top. Now, this scope is made up of several different pieces. It's basically the scope body here, and it balloons out at the end and reduces back down, and it comes out to these four little blades. They're like this, like this, like that, and like that. People call them pips, but it's hollow in the center. And this is only speculation, but it really looks like there's a 3.5 audio plug sticking out of the front of it. Now, the reason why this has been hard to identify is 90% of them are broke off. I believe there's one in the Lucas archives that has most of it still intact, and that's where the people who have studied it and looked at it believe it's a 3.5 audio jack, just an old headphone jack. And on the back of the scope, this is another interesting piece. This Greeblie shows up not so much as in blasters, but it shows up on vehicles and other things. This piece is also on the speeder bike dash. What this piece is this is actually a knob from a vintage Emerson radio. Now, the scope is mounted to the body by means of a scope mount. Now, this scope mount is kind of interesting. It mounts directly to where the rear sight used to mount, and it's believed that this scope mount that this scope is mounted to actually came in the kit with the pellet gun. It had the option, many of them had an option of removing that rear sight and mounting a scope mount where you could put a scope on it and basically use a scope instead of the sights. This thing came with that option, and I believe they used that option to mount this scope. And how the scope is mounted to the scope mount is there are two screws passing through the top of the scope and into the scope mount. Now, Greeblies on this are actually pretty cool. There are two large metal Greeblies here. These are also unknown parts, but these Greeblies themselves are dressed with other parts that we actually do know what they are. But these two pieces, they're definitely from some sort of machine. They just scream to me like old mechanical vending machine parts. I've been inside of those types of machines. I've owned a few in the past. It just feels like these are part of like an old vending style machine. Like you pull a lever and it actuates a lever that releases something and it falls down. But anyway, regardless, they're unknown. We don't know where they came from. On the lower one, they're both on the left and right hand side. On the lower Greeblie, there is the motor coil cover from the Vrel Visible Engine Kit, part number 98. That's a common part. We've seen it all throughout the original trilogy on blasters. Then the upper piece, the upper Greeblie, exactly the same on the left and the right. There's this piece right here. And what this is this is a half of a bomb from the F4 Phantom II Revell kit, kit number 182. This is also a popular kit that we've seen parts from on DH-17s and a bunch of other different stuff. That's where these parts come from. Now, this part here, this little dome piece, I'm not sure if this is actually part, no one really knows if this is actually part of this overall large metal Greeblie, or if it's an added-on part. We just don't really know for sure. Oh, and on all of these blasters, these parts are metal. They are metal parts that they used, which makes me think maybe they did come from a vending machine, because if you cannibalize a vending machine, these little arms will be repeated all over the machine because of the mechanism. And that's a good possibility where they came from, but that's just speculation. That's just my own feeling of what these parts are. And that's it. There's really no flash suppressor. It's the actual stock barrel at the end. All in all, this is a really cool blaster. And I don't believe there were any cast blasters. None of these were ever cast in fiberglass or anything like that. I think they were all pellet guns. I think they just bought a whole bunch of these pellet guns and modeled them up. One thing I can tell you is they do vary in the way these Greeblies are laid out. Sometimes this piece lays down below. Sometimes they butt right up against each other. And sometimes the bottom one crosses over the top. And aesthetically, I think the bottom one crossing over the top is the best looking version of it. And that's how I build mine. But anyway, thank you for joining us and taking a quick look at the DL-18. I hope you join us next time when we bring in another prop, tear it down, and see what it's made of.